2014 год,
It was in 2014
Мариуполь.
in Mariupol.
В центре моего города
At the center of my town, the angry mob attacked the bus of my orphanage. Armed with baseball bats, someone with a handgun shot through the tire and they started swinging our bus, breaking it. It's a miracle they did not kill the filming crew that was inside. It was just a Hollywood crew. They were coming back with me and saw a pro-Russian gathering. Soviet flags at Mariupol's downtown. They asked whether they could film it. I said, of course. What's the problem? It's my town. People are behaving in bizarre ways. Go film them. But inside of that mob, someone suddenly shouted, Banderovites. And the mob pushed towards us. People turned into animals, a herd of animals at someone's command. It's a miracle that we remained alive. Our driver managed to escape with shot-through tires. It is at this moment that something clicked in me. It is one thing when people attend demonstration to popularize their points of view, but it's a completely different thing when they spring to kill. I'm glad that our team was spared, but it was on that day that something clicked in my mind. People are ready to kill. And then it began. Mariupol, downtown fighting, burning buildings, corpses in the streets. From the first day since the war broke through to my town, we began working to support our troops. Some of my sons at first joined volunteer patriot organizations and then volunteered to join the military to fight at the front. As soon as the front line approached my town, I, with my sons, many of them, I have 35 children, 3 of them are biological. With my sons, we dug first trenches around Mariupol. When no one believed that the town may withstand the attack, when people fled in panic, we came to the outskirts of town with older sons and, risking our lives, dug the trenches when the shelling already began. From those days on, for already 9th year, we continue to work in support of the front. So even prior to February 22, we already lived at war. Together with my sons, we appeared in their killing lists. They have websites where they publish lists of the condemned to death punishment. It is of course a pleasure to see beside my photo the photos of my sons, soldiers. In 2014, one of their sabotage reconnaissance groups in Mariupol was assigned to kill me in front of my church. To put this in context, to kill the father of 35 children about whom Russians themselves produced a film. Russia Today itself shot 2 movies about me before the war. Those movies won awards, were screened at festivals, hero of our time, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden they assign a sabotage reconnaissance group to murder me in front of the church. Before the war, we toured around the world with my sons on bicycles. Before the war, we crossed the whole of Russia, inspiring people to adopt children, motivating them. And they applauded us, greeting us with bread and salt, organized concerts to honor us. We gave hundreds of interviews presented on their town squares. And here they come to kill us after all of that and announce us to be bandits and Nazis. Mr. Nebenza, Russia's representative at the United Nations, proclaimed this spring that they found a children's terrorist camp in Mariupol, where children from 7 to 17 are brought up as terrorists against Russia. And this camp is called Pilgrim. It is my children's center, one of the biggest orphan centers. Sitting at the Security Council of the United Nations, he called my orphanage, my rehabilitation center for children, a terrorist children's center. But there is a little problem here. We traveled through your country. You applauded us, filmed movie about us. You cried hearing stories of my sons who were previously orphaned children. You cried. So what happened? How did we suddenly become a terrorist children's center? Yes, it was their goal to shoot me in front of the church back in 2014. I'm very glad that our counterintelligence apprehended this group, which blew its cover at something unimportant. So their plans were derailed. February 24th. In preparation to the explosion of this situation, no one was able to foresee a terrible treason when Russian military convoys from Crimea approached my town without meeting any resistance. We had a prayer that morning together with other servers of the church. It was on the seashore on a hill by a cross. We prayed, accompanied by sounds of explosions, artillery, and missiles. And right from there, under shelling, we drove to town to help people from under rubble, evacuating them from under shelling to safety. Already on February 24th, I was helping a man to put parts of his wife, mother of 3, into a bag. She was blown to pieces by Russian rocket artillery. All that day of the February 24, we were all over the place evacuating children. One convoy left Mariupol in the morning, another at lunchtime, with those who are ready to leave, but we hope until the end to defend the city, that Mariupol will withstand the attack. But in the evening of February 24th, I got a phone call from our intelligence ordering us to immediately evacuate children from Mariupol. We were given 40 minutes for that. I was literally told, Pastor, the convoy of Russian equipment is heading to cut highway communications. This is the last chance to evacuate children. We already had documents of the Children's Center packed, our mother and child center, our host families who prepared to leave in case of worsening of the situation. We only had 40 minutes. We, as it were, packed our children into cars and buses. Our convoy set out of town in 38 minutes. We took the Zaporizhzhia highway, and as we drove, I've received phone calls. They said, Pastor, accelerate. They're trying to cut you off. So we evacuated children at the last moment before Russians cut off the highway. The most horrible nightmare that I keep on having since February is that I cannot evacuate the children, that the city is blocked off and my children are there. I'm very grateful to God that we managed to evacuate our little ones. Once they were evacuated, we turned around and went back to Mariupol. Together with a team of chaplains, we tried to get back into town. We already recorded farewell videos to our families and sent them to our friends and tried to re-enter Mariupol. We almost re-entered Volodarsk. It is very close to town, but Russians were already everywhere, and a few times we actually bounced from the front line, fighting all around us. The Lord had pity on us and saved our lives. We were not able to get through the front line back to town. From that day on, understanding that the city is blocked, we started doing anything we could to help people get out of there. The first convoys of evacuees had left Mariupol was guided by my son. One of older sons drove in front of the convoy in a car, paving the way through the Russian landmines. The buses were full of women and children, and there was about another 30 vehicles after them. They were driving cross country, risking being blown up by the Russian mines. After guiding one convoy, he went back and guided second, third, fourth convoys, and we continued to evacuate people from Mariupol. I think our team evacuated around 8,000 people. Families of the servicemen were also evacuated. It was simply a huge amount of miracles. God was covering the eyes of the enemies to save lives of our guys. It is a great story. Chaplain is not a new phenomenon anywhere in the world. It is a priest at time of war, but for us it was something new. We did not prepare for that. We did not think or plan the front lines in front of our windows. But ever since 2014, as a priest and bishop of one of the Christian churches of my country, we understood that we automatically became chaplains. When you drive to the front line as a priest, you not only deliver food, clothing, or medications, but you sit down for tea with the guys. The conversations begin, they have questions, and automatically you transit from the category of a priest to a chaplain. So since 2014, we turned into chaplains and formed our chaplain detachment, a separate detachment of military chaplains. 8 years we worked as chaplains on the front lines. But since February 24th, as we found ourselves outside of Mariupol, we came together, reorganized our team to continue work under new circumstances. Hundreds of thousands of tons of shipments we delivered to the front line and basements. We're familiar with practically all hotspots where the fighting is ongoing. The Zaporizhia direction, Nikopol, Kherson, Slovyansk. Everywhere there our chaplains work. We load our vehicles, drive to very hot spots. First of all, we help our defenders talk, eat borscht. We have a rule. Chaplains must eat together with soldiers at the front. The point, of course, is not food, but the atmosphere, the communion. And of course, we serve civilians that live in basements at the front line. We have access accordingly, as nobody can get there at will. Guys on my team have been under shelling. They found themselves under serious shelling dozens and dozens of times. So, morally, we are more or less ready for such extreme adventures at the front. And at times, I do have serious conversations about faith with people in trenches who never thought that they would ever be seriously interested in serious religious questions. We have a rule not to leave without a prayer. As chaplains, wherever we go, we conclude our interaction with a prayer. And even in a rare case when we find a skeptic at the front, the skepticism quickly passes. I have this funny story to tell. Once we brought a friend of mine to Shirokine, the winner of the voice singing competition, a member of my community. We brought him to Shirokine, and right there, this voice of Ukraine sang an improvised concert in the trenches. And so, as always, we got together to pray before leaving. Here comes a guy and says, I'm a skeptic, whether there is God or not, it's not that important. And so he says, as you prayed, I was sitting there smiling. Literally after 20 minutes after your prayer, After you prayed that God saves our lives, I went back to my trench and was playing with a grenade. And somehow it drops to my feet with a safety pin removed. He says, you know, they said that at such a moment you recall your life. No way. I remembered yourselves. I remembered you, chaplains, and your prayer. And the grenade does not explode under the feet. And so he wrote us a message thanking for our prayers. The war makes religious questions more acute. A priest at the front line is important, even more so, because our enemy proclaimed this war to be one of de-satanization of Ukraine. In other words, they come under religious flags, under the flags of a fight for orthodoxy, churchliness, and so-called Russian spiritual staples. And many people do need an explanation that these are false staples, that this is pseudo-spirituality, that these guys in black robes carry their KGB insignia underneath. They are truly evil, because a real priest at the front line must tell a soldier, must clearly show where is good and where is evil. In general, our soldiers understand things well. We do not go to occupy their country, so God, the truth, justice are certainly on our side. And the enemy, who proclaimed this war a spiritual or religious war, commits a terrible sin. One of the commandments, do not utter the name of your Lord in vain, may be interpreted as evil committed in the name of the Lord is the worst sin. About this commandment, God says, I will not forgive this. People that commit terrible evil and proclaim that they do it in the name of God commit the worst sin. Russia obviously is guilty of this sin. They declared it a holy war. This war is fought for the holy word for Ukrainians, freedom. We have all the rights to defend our families, children. I have excellent relationships with Orthodox bishops. We work together on projects with Catholics, Greek Catholics, different Protestant churches. We are all Christians, we're all brethren, we have one Lord, but the Moscow Patriarchate is definitely a sect. They were always claiming to be the only true, correct. We are the only ones who communicate with God here, and everybody else around are sects. But the truth is exactly the opposite. The Moscow Patriarchate is a monstrous caricature of a church that for centuries stand on their knees in front of the czars and justify their evil. This is a quasi-church. In biblical terms, this is not the bride of Christ, but a spiritual harlot. This is a terrible phenomenon, and it is, of course, a branch of the KGB of the Soviet Union, without any doubt. I'm glad that at last this topic has been seriously raised and the process is moving from debates to concrete actions. This is not a church. I'm certainly in favor of freedom of conscience and faith, but this is a branch of Russian FSB. And of course, we need to be done with it at the time of war. Christmas is not just about New Year's gifts, Christmas trees, and bold decorations. The Christmas story is the story of joy of the Savior's birth, but it was also a bloody story of Herod, murdered children. There were a cry of pain of mothers and fathers of these children. Christmas and blood, Christmas and pain were present in those Christmas days. Ukraine in particular understand it very well. Our Christmas is shot through. I'm certainly convinced that we will prevail in this war. The fact that we persisted in March and February is God's miracle. Heroism and courage of our soldiers and citizens, absolutely, yes. The fact that we withstood the attack is a spiritual phenomenon. It's a victory of the Spirit, and this Spirit comes from the Lord and nourishes our hearts. And in those days of horrific fear, seeming collapse, crying when it all began in February, the invisible hand of God embraced my people, gave us the courage to fight and persist. I would like that we thank God in these Christmas days for His presence. I would really like that the first post-war victory speech of leadership of our country contains gratefulness to our Creator. Merry Christmas to you all. Do look at sky at times and do know that the light will definitely overcome darkness. And the invisible angels of God, their invisible choir, somehow noticed by the shepherds. It was a military choir. There appeared a great army and proclaimed the glory of God. I do believe that unseen, His angels are fighting together with the Ukrainian people, and this guarantees our victory. We will definitely win this war, and we will be a free nation. Do you want to know for whom the bell rings? I will tell you, for the Russian world and the Kremlin monsters.